Well, history is underway at our nation's capital, where in just a few hours, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States of America. Here's a look at the White House and Capitol Hill right now. We know that President Trump will not be attending Mr. Biden's inauguration. He's already left the Capitol, in fact. It's the first time in over 100 years a sitting president has skipped the ceremony. Meanwhile, President-elect Biden is starting his day by attending Mass alongside Democratic and Republican leaders, including Senator Mitch McConnell and Congressman Kevin McCarthy. He'll then head to the Capitol, where he'll officially be sworn into office by Chief Justice John Roberts, and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will be sworn in by Justice Sonia Sotomayor. After that, Mr. Biden will head to Arlington National Cemetery for a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And he'll wrap up the day at the White House, followed by a virtual parade. The president-elect is also set to issue more than a dozen executive orders on his first day in office. This includes implementing a nationwide mask mandate, freezing student loans, and joining the Paris Climate Accord.
So, for more on all of this, let us bring in Christina Greer. She's an associate professor of political science at Fordham University. She's also the author of Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Christina, good to see you on this inauguration day. Just how historic is today for this country as President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris take office?
Well, Vlad, you mentioned it in the previous segment. You know, Joe Biden is only the second Catholic president we've ever seen in the nation, and I think that means a lot to Catholics across the globe, but especially because the past 4 years, Donald Trump was not a particularly religious president. He very rarely went to church, did not really have a strong foundation in faith, and so I think a lot of people who identify as Christians or faith-filled individuals will find some comfort with Joe Biden, especially during our moment where we've passed 400,000 Americans who have died from COVID. And then obviously with Kamala Harris as the first woman, she's technically the 49th vice president of the United States, but the first woman, the first black person, the first person of Asian descent, the first child, well, she's not the first child of immigrants, but in modern history, a child of immigrants. So there are a lot of firsts in these two. I mean, her husband is Jewish, so we have the first, second gentleman. The list goes on. And I think that there's just a collective sigh of relief that this administration reflects America descriptively much more so than what we've seen in the last 4 years.
But, they have a lot on their plate. The president-elect and vice president-elect are inheriting a host of big challenges: the coronavirus pandemic, the economic struggles that many are dealing with as a result of the pandemic, the issues with racial injustice and inequality. How is all of this going to affect the incoming administration? Because, you know, Joe Biden may have a list of things to do that he would like to address, but some of these other issues need to be addressed before he can move on to anything else.
Right. I mean, Anne Marie, I think, you know, the word I keep trying to repeat to myself is a certain level of pragmatic patience. Not only does Joe Biden need to get COVID-19 under control, he's got to sort of think about the vaccine rollout. The good thing is Joe Biden believes in science and scientists, something that Donald Trump was very clear he was not interested in, that he knew more than Dr. Anthony Fauci. I think, you know, making sure that we get the country back on track economically is of great importance, because we know that factors like stress and high blood pressure and cholesterol are exacerbating our public health crisis. And then, obviously, the events of January 6th are still very fresh. Domestic terrorism is very real. I mean, you mentioned in the previous segment how Republicans crossed the aisle. Only 10 Republicans crossed the aisle to vote for impeachment of the president. Many Republicans in Congress still believe in this idea of stop the steal and the conspiracy theories that have been put out there for the past few weeks by Donald Trump and members of his administration. So Joe Biden has a lot of work to do to bridge the divide between the Democratic and Republican parties, but also to help us get out from underneath this public health crisis that we've suffered in extreme ways, and really, I think, you know, put together a public service announcement to help people understand the grave danger that we're still in due to the coronavirus and why it is that a vaccine is necessary, why it is that we need to wear masks. We have half of the country who's been told that that is obsolete, and they don't really need to think about those ideas. So I don't envy the Biden-Harris administration. They are definitely public servants. But the good thing is Joe Biden came into power with Barack Obama in 2009 with one of the worst economic crises that we've seen in such a long time, and he hit the ground running then. So I'm confident that he'll take some of those skills and lessons learned and apply them in 2021.
Christina, as you know, our nation's first ever vice president, John Adams, wrote to his wife that the role of the vice president rendered him completely insignificant. But the question that I have for you is about the vice president-elect, Kamala Harris. Do you see her playing an even bigger role in the White House? How do you see her impacting this administration over the next 4 years?
Oh, I think that she'll have quite a large role. I mean, if you remember, in 2009, when Barack Obama came in, Barack Obama was, 44 years old? And he relied on Joe Biden, who had had so many decades of experience in Congress in Washington, D.C. Barack Obama had only been a senator for a little bit over a year and a half. And so the role of the vice president for Joe Biden was one where he was a real partner to Barack Obama. He was the first in the room and the last to leave the room. And Joe Biden's made it very clear that he trusts and believes Kamala Harris's experience and her thought processes will assist him in the myriad of issues that he's facing. I think it's also interesting that as a Democrat, for the Democratic Party, we haven't had representation from the West Coast at the presidential or vice presidential levels. And so just even bringing a geographic diversity will help Joe Biden think about a 50-state strategy and also an international strategy as we try and move from underneath the last 4 years.
Speaking of Kamala Harris, CBS News did a bunch of polling about her, and one of the results of the poll was that Democrats overwhelmingly felt like the historic nature of her being the vice president was a good thing. Republicans said, it didn't really matter. Most of them, 54% said, that she's a woman of color, that she's a woman. None of that really matters. I'm just curious your take on the two differences between Republican and Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've been reading, for a lot of Democrats, people who have children, they've said, this isn't just historic for their daughters, this is historic for their sons to see women in leadership. We're one of the last major democracies that has not had female leadership at this level. Many of our counterparts have had female leadership. So I think it's important, not just descriptively, but substantively, someone who was a sitting senator, U.S. senator, who does come with a wealth of experience and knowledge, who will serve as a partner to Joe Biden. I think the Republican Party, many of those individuals are still under the shadow of Trump, and they will never see a woman of color as an equal. They will never see a woman of color as competent. But there will be some more, hopefully, when Kamala Harris gets in there. We've seen it when she's been in the Senate and the Judiciary Committee, how she has served the nation valiantly and really helped move a conversation forward. So I have full confidence that she'll be able to do so as Vice President of the United States. And I think I'm really excited to see this sharing of power that Joe Biden has been very clear, as someone who has definitely been in public service for several decades and has evolved as a public servant and as a man working with other women in the workspace. I'm excited to see what this duo can do to put the country back on track.
Christina, one of the things I'm curious about, and this is sort of a nuanced question, but, I keep thinking about the expectations that Americans had for President Barack Obama as he was sworn in to the presidency. And there was an expectation from a lot of people of color in my own talking to them and reporting on them that they expected Barack Obama to be a champion for African Americans, but he had to walk a very fine line, right? He realized that he was the president of all Americans and that he could not be seen to be giving preferential treatment to any group, any political group or any ethnic peoples populating this country. But I wonder if the burden that Barack Obama carried is perhaps a little lighter for Joe Biden. And I say that because not only has Joe Biden been in Washington for some 50 years now and knows everybody and has a very strong command of the levers of government and how to get things done, having been a senator for so long. But also, just as a white man, he's perhaps able to do things that sometimes people of color are not able to do. Does that make sense, my question?
Absolutely, Vlad, and I've actually written about this and thought about it quite extensively. I think you're correct. Barack Obama had several limitations. One, there were several members of Congress who just would not work with him because he was a black man. And so that's when he would utilize Joe Biden to go and talk to the Mitch McConnells of the Senate and various people in the House who swore that they wanted Barack Obama to be a one-term president and would not negotiate with him in any capacity. We see this a lot on the local level. And I think Joe Biden will be a beneficiary of this. He will be able to, we can look at his cabinet and some of his appointments already. He's been able to appoint African Americans, Latinx individuals, people from the Asian American community without people saying he's playing favorites. Barack Obama had challenges doing that because when he would nominate a successful and qualified African American, it was viewed by some as giving preferential treatment to African Americans. So Joe Biden doesn't have that same burden. In some ways, Black Americans can get advancements in policies from white leadership in ways that it's much more difficult for Black leaders to do that because they have to play the sort of all tides lift all boats scenario when sometimes that's not the case, especially when we're dealing with historical inequities. I think the 8 years that Joe Biden spent working with and alongside Barack Obama has also helped him understand a more nuanced racial analysis, not just from policy, but also from his colleagues and those who have implicit and explicit biases when it comes to working with or thinking about African Americans. And so I think he's in good footing as he moves ahead because he did have those 8 years working for a black man and dealing with many of his colleagues. And I'm sure he saw quite a bit from people that he had known for a very long time and was very surprised by their behavior, as he's alluded to on the campaign trail. So I am cautiously optimistic, but I think, just looking at even some of the executive orders that Joe Biden has sort of put out thus far, we know that when it comes to the environment, we're going to see some rollbacks of the Trump administration that will save not only protected lands and Native American communities, but will have trickling effects to Black communities, white communities across the nation. We know that this is a man who cares about the social safety net. So we'll see that shored up in ways that it's been eroded over the past 4 years. So I think a lot of Joe Biden's understanding of the inequities of this nation really do stem from his understanding and evolution of understanding race and racism in this nation.
I like the way you sort of underlined evolution. That was sort of one of the sparks during the primary between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And I think that's what makes her such a good VP for him, is that unlike what we've been witnessing over the past 4 years, where we saw a vice president that was always in lockstep, never appeared to be critical in any way, we have a vice president here and a team that acknowledges that you can have differences but still work towards a common goal, and that's a good thing. And so, yeah, I'm very curious to see what this team is going to do as well moving forward. Christina Greer, it's really great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Happy Inauguration Day.
To you as well, Christina. Thank you.